Hello, everybody, and welcome to another NYU reading, remote NYU reading. We're so excited to have Layli Long Soldier here. Of course, we wish we were all together in the writer's house at West 10th, but we are going to have a great evening tonight with Layli. I'm going to have a few questions for her afterwards, and then in the chat, you can post your own questions. There are many of you here tonight, and we won't be able to get to all your questions, but I will do my best to make sure we can. Before we start, I just want to send out a special shout out to Mr. Phillips students from Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome. So I'm so happy to be able to present Layli Long Soldier to you all this evening. You all know her from her incomparable book, Whereas. It's one of the boldest and most self-assured debuts I've seen in many years. I've taught it several times here at NYU, and no one can resist its power and its charms. I think that's because it's able to be all things to all people. It's undeniably powerful. It's beautifully lyrical. It's political. It's personal. The way the book deals with promises broken and promises redeemed, both national and personal, is masterful. I don't know anyone who's read this book who doesn't love it. And it won the National Book Critics Circle Award and was a finalist for the National Book Award. Long Soldier earned a BFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts in beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she still lives, and an MFA with honors from Bard College. Despite being an award-winning poet, deep down, she wishes she were a musician, which is funny because so many musicians write books of poems, which usually goes poorly. And you know that Layli Long Soldier's album would be a million times better than Halsey's book. She has recurring flying dreams, though as she's grown older, they've changed. When she was younger, flying in her dreams came easily to her. With light steps, she leapt high over buildings. It was effortless. Now, in her dreams, flying is physically more difficult, like a workout, she says. She still always feels amazed. Layli Long Soldier is a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation. Maybe some of you aren't aware that many people in America are also citizens of native nations like this. Growing up in Oklahoma, I remember seeing a car drive by with the license plates from the Kiowa Nation. I thought, wow, I wish I lived in a different country too. If it were her last evening on Earth, Layli Long Soldier would like her final meal to be something light, like almost nothing. So she leaves this world easily, which frankly, I think is the wrong answer. She pictures something like tabbouleh with small pieces of avocado and tomato and water. But her favorite meal of all time, the meal she has each year on her birthday, is crab legs, French bread, and salad. And I think that's really more like it. The Northern Plains in early summer is her favorite landscape on Earth, when there are wide stretches of high green grass, when the breeze blows and the green ripples in silver. Some of you will recognize this from her book, what she refers to in lovely, evocative passages as grasses, 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 which is one of the most beautiful examples of onomatopoeia I think I've ever encountered. She's also the winner of a Lannan Literary Fellowship for Poetry, a Whiting Writers Award, and a National Artist Fellowship from the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation. We're so pleased to have her with us this evening. We only wish we were all together in person at the Writers House on West 10th to hear her read. Please give her a big NYU welcome.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I am very happy to be here with everyone. It's also a little odd because I can't see any of you, and I am, in a way, just talking to, all I can see is myself. But I do see some comments coming in. So hello, everyone. I'm so glad you can be here. And as I listened to Matthew, I was thinking, I feel like I revealed a little bit too much about myself, but that's okay. I'm going to, let's see, I like to show things on the screen a lot. That makes things a little funner. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to read from Whereas, but I'll show a few images as I read. And these, the pictures you'll see if you were in the lecture earlier today, you'll recognize some of those pictures. But I'm going to share a few photos from an installation, an exhibit a long time ago, some years ago, while I was writing Whereas, and it was the exhibit was called Whereas We Respond. So I'm going to share my screen and then read a few pieces from the book to go along with those photos. Let's see what I can do here. Can you guys see that? I'll need someone to say yes.
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna try this view slideshow. Let's give that a try. This is from our presentation earlier today. But this is an exhibit that are an interactive installation we had on Pine Ridge at the Heritage Center, where we projected some sections of the national apology to the congressional apology to Native Americans. We projected some of those sections onto the walls and invited our community to come and respond to that text by writing on the wall. I'm just going to read an introduction to the Whereas pieces, just to give you a little background if you're not familiar with my book and this work. On Saturday, December 19th, 2009, US President Barack Obama signed the Congressional Resolution of Apology to Native Americans. No tribal leaders or official representatives were invited to witness and receive the apology on behalf of tribal nations. President Obama never read the apology aloud publicly, although, for the record, Senator Brownback, 5 months later, read the apology to a gathering of 5 tribal leaders, though there are more than 560 federally recognized tribes in the US. The apology was then folded into a larger, unrelated piece of legislation called the 2010 Defense Appropriations Act. My response is directed to the apology's delivery, or I should say lack of delivery, maybe, as well as the language, crafting, and arrangement of the written document. I'm going to read the first piece, actually the opening poem to this series. Whereas, when offered an apology, I watch each movement, the shoulders, high or folding, tilt of the head, both eyes down or straight through me. I listen for cracks in knuckles or in the word choice. What is it that I want? To feel, and mind you, I feel from the senses. I read each muscle. I ask the strength of the gesture to move like a poem. Expectation is a terse armfold, a failing noun thing. I scold myself in the mirror for holding. Because I learn from young poets. One sends me new work, spotted with salt crystals. She metaphors as her tears. I feel her phrases, quote, I say, and understand me, and I wonder. Pages are cavernous places, white at entrance, black in absorption. Echo. If I'm transformed by language, I am often crouched in footnote or blazing in title. Where in the body do I begin? Whereas at 4 years old, I read the first chapter of the Bible aloud. I was not Christian. Whereas my hair, unbraided, ran the length of my spine, I sometimes sat on it. Whereas at the table, my legs dangled, I could not balance peas on my fork. Whereas I used my fingers carefully, I pushed the bright green onto silver tines. Whereas you eat like a pig, the lady said, setting my plate on the floor. Whereas she instructed me to finish on my hands and knees. She took another bite. Whereas I watched folds of pale curtains inhale and exhale a summer dance. Whereas in the breath of the afternoon room, each tick of the clock. Whereas I rose and placed my eyes and tongue on a shelf above the table first. Whereas I kneeled to my plate, I kneeled to the greatest questions. Whereas that moment I knew who I was. Whereas the moment before I swallowed. Whereas, excuse me, whereas I did not desire in childhood to be a part of this, but desired most of all to be a part, a piece, combined with others to make up a whole. Some, but not all of something. In Lakota, it's hanke, a piece or part of anything. Like the creek trickling behind my auntie's house, where uncle built her a bridge to cross from bank to bank. Not far from the grassy clearing with 3 teepees, a place to gather. She holds 3-day workshops on traditional arts. Young people from Kyle and Potato Creek arrive one by one, eager to participate. They have the option, my auntie says, to sleep at home or return in the morning. But by and large, they'll stay and camp even during South Dakota winters. The comfort of being together. I think of plains, winds, snowdrifts, ice and limbs, the exposure, and when I slide my arms into a wool coat and put my hand to the doorknob, ready to brave the sub-zero dark, someone says, be careful out there. Always consider the snow your friend. Think badly of it. Snow will burn you. I walk out remembering that for millennia we have called ourselves Lakota, meaning friend, meaning friend or ally. This relationship to the other, some but not all, still our piece to everything. This is my grandma, Sha. My grandma, Mabel. She came to the exhibit. She has passed away now, but I felt so lucky to have her come. This is the last piece from this particular series from Whereas I'm gonna read. But I wanted to read this in honor of Joy Harjo, our US Poet Laureate. This is a piece I actually, the person I'm referring to, the she in this poem is Joy Harjo. And this was from long ago when I first met her, when I was much younger. I'm getting old now, but that's okay. Okay. Whereas she wrote a poem about him. He is a relative of mine. She's a lauded poet. She shakes my hand. When they were young, she says, he had an episode at the Indian school. Really? I want to ask for the story, but I don't, and admire how tension chisels detail into memory. I remember her hand at the plastic zipper of her vest, the sculpture of her knuckles, a bone in her wrist. How much should she tell me? How much to withhold? I watch her ask her higher self. He broke down in a way that the rest of us wanted to, she offers. I have not finished the poem, she says. Now that we've met, maybe I will. I'll send you a copy if I do. Though it has not been sent. Though I'll never ask for it. I imagine the episode. Him breaking down like the rest of us want to. What this looks like on the page in poem. Yay! That's all I'm going to share from Whereas. And the person that Joy Harjo was referring to, that she met, excuse me, wrong slide. That was, the relative was actually my dad. They went to art school, Indian school when they were younger together. And of course, Joy Harjo ended up being a poet all these years, and my father likewise ended up painting. That's all he's ever done. He's been a painter. So, and I remember when she talked about meeting him, and then he had kind of a breakdown at school. Over the years, I've heard more to that story. So, and I kind of get a chuckle out of it sometimes. Anyway, I'm going to move on. I'm going to read some newer work. I'm going to read a piece that I shared in the lecture today from what I call my star quilt poems. And then I'm going to show a video and share a brand new piece that is not totally settled in its bones. But I always like to share new work because it keeps me going, keeps me alive, and keeps me on my toes. So even if it's not perfectly revised and it's not all there, I still like to, I like to share new work. So first I'm going to share some pieces from what I call my star quilt poems. You see these star quilts I made out of heavy paper and copper wire. These quilts measure 12 feet high by 12 feet wide. The little dots you see in the black piece, that is text laser cut into each diamond. The pieces I'm going to read come from those sections. All of these poems were made. I'd like to thank Mary and Clementine Bordeaux and the women in our community. For this exhibit, they interviewed 6 women in our community and asked them to share something about Midakuye Oyasin, which is a phrase in our language that means like we are all related, or all my relatives. So this is on the idea of being related, relationship, these poems, and what it is to be a good relative. I'm going to share. There's Clementine and Mary. They're so sweet. I love them. I'm going to read this piece actually because I've noticed that it's been going around on the internet lately. I don't know why people sort of took a liking to it. I think it has to do with COVID and the difficult year we've been in. But it does come from that black star quilt you saw. And one of our community members talking about grief and working through grief in order to have healthier, better relationships and, to be a better relative to others. So I'm going to read this piece for all of you. As we embrace the future, we work to understand the grief. We shift into light across our faces. As we embrace the future, we struggle to find the grief. We shift into light across our faces. As we embrace the present, we struggle to unbraid the grief. We wield into light across our faces. As we resist the present, we struggle to unbraid the grief. We wield as ash across our faces. As we resist the past, we fail to question the grief. We bury as ash across our faces. I'm gonna stop with that one, with that series, and I'm going to move into my new work. So I'm being very vulnerable with you guys. I know that there's issues with it, but I'm okay with sharing that. You know, it's good to read new work out loud, helps us see it from a distance in a way. So I can't believe how quickly time goes by. I wanted to share a video and the poem, but okay, so I'm going to quickly say that I'm working on a series of pieces that I was commissioned to make by a university on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. I have opened that series up to extend to all Indigenous people. I have decided not to make it completely gender specific, but my approach right now, I started working with, of all things, and there's something called red dress specials. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but these days there's a lot of times at our gatherings, at powwows, um, they will hold what they call specials, and all the women will come out in red dresses or wearing something of red, and they will dance for our missing children or women, and for the families and for the survivors. So what I started doing is listening. Of all the things that was most interesting to me was hearing the powwow MCs, because the way that they introduce the specials, it's always very they always honor the community members and the missing people, but they also keep things, try to keep our spirits high, because the dancers need to go in and have strength, right? So they need to have their energy up. And so there's something very beautiful about these different introductions from the MCs. So I'm going to share one of those introductions tonight. And I'm working with that text in a kind of, I suppose you would call it found poems. But I'm going to quickly see if I'm going to share quickly an example of a red dress special, just so that you know kind of what it looks like, and that what happens at the community level. So this is actually a very fancy red dress special, because it was at the Gathering of Nations, and it was held by Tia Wood. So she's a pretty well-known singer, and she's also kind of a style icon these days. So I'm going to play this red dress special, and afterwards I'll share the newer piece that I've written. And that's Tia right there. Okay. Every single time I see that, when community members, when the women join in, when they join Tia, I cry. I don't know why. It's so moving to me. And I just, look, I'm getting emotional now, but I really honor all of the community members who come to remember our missing women and our children. Oh, I'm seeing somebody said there was so much lag in the video. How sad. I was wishing that you would see it properly. Shoot. Anyway, I hope you get a sense for it. I would recommend maybe going on YouTube. You can look up red dress specials, and they're very beautiful. And I'm so sorry that you couldn't see the video properly. What I'm going to do now is move to the piece that I made, and I'm going to read the text from the MC, one of the MCs. This is from a gathering actually in Canada, in First Nations, and his introduction to the Red Dress Special. And then I'll read some of the work that I'm making right now. It's not perfect, so just be prepared, but I'm doing my best. So let's see if I can share screen, and we will move to that piece quickly. I think this is it. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay. And enter full screen. Okay. And so if we have any friends from Canada, please forgive me for the pronunciation of this tribal name. I'm going to do my best. But this is from the Kakawastaha powwow in July of 2019. And this is from the MC at that powwow. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kakawastaha First Nation, they came to the powwow committee here to hold their special. And they call it, and it's going around all over Indian country, and it is called the Red Dress Special. And it's for missing and murdered Indigenous women and children, and it's in honor of them. And we ask the Great Spirit and our powwow spirit to help us out. We'll shake the fringes, we'll shake the bells, we'll shake everything here to help the spirit to reach out and bring our loved ones home to be safe. You see, there's one right here from Kakawastaha First Nation. Help bring Janaea home. Janaea Wapamus, she has visible tattoos. Her tattoo, it said Annabelle on the left side of her chest, Wapamus on the right side of her chest. Each day is a gift, is on her left forearm. 3 stars behind her left ear. She's been missing. She's a young girl. And for those individuals, we as men were protectors of the women. We protect the women, not hurt them. They're from the Creator to give us life, and without them, we wouldn't be here. So the men that are in here, you have to imagine I have an MC voice, really loud. But anyway, the men that are in here, we're going to ask you to listen up. We care for our women. We care for our children. We love our women. We love our children. They brought us into this world, and it is our right to work for the Creator and protect our women, because that work goes to the Creator. So men that are here hearing us, don't hurt your women. Don't hurt the women. we're going to go to bullhorn, and I'm assuming bullhorn is the drum. But before we do that, we're going to go to say a prayer. We all know someone that's missing. We know someone that's missing. And we're going to ask the Great Spirit, the Grandfather, to bring them home. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you to dance for that prayer. There's one right here. She is Janaea. Her tattoos on the left side of her chest, Annabelle. On the right, Wapamus. Behind her left ear, 3 stars. 3 stars tattoo her, a young girl with 3 stars behind the ear. She's missing from the First Nation. On her left forearm, each day is a gift. Each day is a gift. Each day a gift. In a red dress at the special for the women, for the children, for the missing children, for the young girls, we'll shake our fringes, shake our bells. In a red dress, shake the individuals, the committee, the protectors, the ladies, the gentlemen, and someone will shake the creator of this and this country, this Indian country, this world and its work. With the bullhorn, we will ask, and as we ask, shake into prayer. Because you see, because you see individuals and you see women, because you see them, then you see Indian. And when you see them in fringes, you see them here as fringe nations. But because you do see she, they, them, us, and we, you will see what we see. We see what's missing in you too. Yes, it is a gift to come, to go, to hold, to honor, to right, to left and behind, to reach, to bring, to give and to give life, to love, to hurt, to ask, to work, to care, to listen, to know, to call, to one, to a special one, to home, to here, to indigenous, us into the visible. Okay, I have a feeling I went way over time. So that happens all the time. So clearly I need to stop. And Matthew, Joanna, please forgive me for going for so long.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. That was so wonderful. Amazing. Thank you for sharing not just your poems, but so much of the visuals and the dance. And it was a little laggy, but I don't want you to feel bad because people were posting the links in the chat. So everyone has the chance to see it on their own. So, and it did still look beautiful. Layli, I have so many nerdy poetry questions,
Yeah.
but, and I probably will ask some of them, and I'm sure we will have questions from the audience too, but I just want to start with, I wondered if you could just talk, there's so many of us here from so many different places, if you could just talk to us a little bit about the Institute for American Indian Arts. You know, I know that most of us probably aren't that familiar with it as an institution. You know, what did you study there? Who were the teachers there? Who do you really felt pushed you? Can you just talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. To my knowledge, it's the only tribal arts college, you know, with a mission to serve tribal students. It's the only one in the U.S. I could be wrong, but I think it's the first one. So I want to say in the Native arts community, it's like well known, and we've had so many well-known writers and artists who have gone to school there, who are alumni, and who have taught there, and so on.
And
So
is
I think,
this, oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry, is this the school where Joy Harjo met your father? Oh, that's
yes.
great. That's so great.
So when they were young, yes, Joy went to IAI. It's called IAI. So Joy went to IAI. My dad went to IAI. I mean, just so many painters and so on. And so my dad went there. I went there. I met my daughter's dad there. We're not together anymore, but you know, we met there. I had a baby there.
Mm.
And so it is kind of has been a big part of my life. And I have many friends. Of a lot of the friends I went to school with there, we are still all these years. I saw, for example, I saw Diani make a comment, Diani Whitehawk, who is a friend of mine. We went to school together. We babysat each other's kids, and now we're still in touch. And she's a visual artist, and so you know, there's many examples of that. So it's a beautiful. It's not just the education, but it's also the connections.
Right.
In many ways, it feels like family. But I will say this too: I did very poorly academically when I was growing up. Um, I mean, at one stage, I did drop out of high school. I'm a high school dropout.
Mhm.
At one stage, I did so poorly. I mean, I was flunking PE. That's how bad it was. But not all of it. A lot of it wasn't just about comprehension. It was about a place of belonging. And I didn't really feel like I belonged um, in most schools. And when I went to IAIA, that was the first time, except for when I was very small, like 5 years old, it was the first time that I had succeeded academically. I made A's and B's, and I was shocked, you know, and I enjoyed going to school.
Mm.
So it made all the difference to see Native faculty and to have our philosophies and languages and art history, our practices. That was like the baseline. You know, it was understood. You didn't have to explain everything. So it made all the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Before I do have some questions about the poems, but there is a question in the chat, which I think maybe relates. It's just, are there Native writers who are especially on your mind these days? Since we're talking about the IAIA.
Native writers, especially on my mind, I suppose maybe, let's see. One of my friends, she didn't go to IAIA, but I do have a friend named Tanya Lucan Linklater. She just published this book this year, 2020. So I guess last year, titled Slow Scrape. She is a Lutic and she lives in Canada.
Mhm.
But gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous work. I mean, even the text is blue. I love it. And
Oh, wow.
gorgeous, gorgeous forms, just incredible. Billy Ray Belcourt just had a book of essays come out. He's also from Canada, but he, you know, I think we're all kind of in conversation. So the border doesn't really mean much
Right,
in
right.
many ways. There's more, but yeah, those are two that I've been thinking about a lot.
So let me ask you, because you showed us that really beautiful star quilt poem, and then getting to see the images of them too is great. And that just reminded me of I guess the diamond quilt. That just reminded me of one of my favorite parts of your book is there's so many types of poems in there, and I guess even, I mean, in terms of form, you seem to have such a sense of freedom with form. It's so playful. There are things that are, almost, unreadable in a sense because they're beautiful. I guess my question is, would you mind talking to us about, in your mind, what is the relationship of form and content in your poems? Does it always arise together? Do you ever apply the form afterwards? Just I don't know that I've seen a book with so many variations of form in it, and I'd just love to know how you do that.
I talked about this a little bit in my lecture earlier today. So some of this might be repeated if you were listening to the lecture, but I'll expand on it a little. Sometimes form comes first. So the Star Quilt poems are a good example. I knew that when I was invited to participate in that exhibit, I knew that I did not want to write poems that were just on a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It's like, that is not going to work up north with our community. Like, it would be very blah, right? What are you going to do with that? Put it on, like scotch tape it onto the wall, so right. I knew that I needed to work with visually and with materials. And so it was really the pattern. I had a sewing pattern, and I expanded those diamonds to 1 foot long each. So it was the pattern that came first. I said, I want to make a huge star quilt. Wow. And then I want to laser cut text into the diamonds. So that was those are the first two things I knew. I wanted to laser cut text, and I wanted to have it really big. And I wanted to use a symbol or like something that was recognizable to our community, to my family members, so that because I wanted them to engage with the work, I wanted it to be interesting to them too. So that was the first step that determined everything else. And then I sat down and I listened to these interviews. I took notes, interviews with the community people, and I spent a long time doing that. Many hours. I mean, altogether, that whole project took like a year or so, from listening to the interviews, making the poems, and getting the phrases just right, and laser cutting and sewing, just sitting at the table, constructing those, putting those diamonds together. Oh my God. So that took a long time, but that's a great, that's an example. I think sometimes I do work, I think visually first. It's like, I want to see a big star, or I want to see a square on the page, or I want to see, and that, because it's fun, and it's entertaining, and I enjoy it. And then, and also because shape communicates. So you guys all know what it's like to flip through a book, right? You flip through and you stop on a page because it looks interesting. You stop because you say, oh, look at all that space. What is that? It's because before you read a single word, the shape is flashing and calling out to you,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think, in many ways I work like that. Not always though. Sometimes it is the language and the contents, and I have to kind of hammer it out after I get it on the page. But yeah.
That's amazing. And I totally agree. When I look through poetry books, I just flip, and a page draws me in before I've read the words. I think that's how it works. Yours though are so particularly beautiful and so strange. There's another question about, it says, can you talk a bit about the act of naming in poetry, specifically the difference between, quote, identifying through naming and telling through naming?
Naming in poetry? Like, what do you mean?
Well, it's not my question exactly, but I mean, I actually sort of maybe want to try to fold it into a question that I had too. You know, I see so much of your book, whereas as a critique of sort of written and language and the kind of problems of institutionalized written language. And there's so many, and there's so many speech acts in your book that seem to be, you know, spoken acts. I wonder if there's some relationship between these questions, the idea of like of speaking, naming places. There's so many place names in the book. There are so many you know, sort of personal names. Did you make a distinction, I guess, in whereas between, you know, was there, you're clearly critiquing this vapid governmental document and its language. Was there a special power involved in sort of the speech that opposes that in the book? I mean, I'm just probably trying very hard to make these two questions go together, and it's maybe
Yeah.
not working. Um,
Well, I mean, if you want to like address, for example, you know, the whereas poems, right?
yeah.
So what I had to first deal with, the first thing I had to deal with was governmental language and the language of congressional acts, which in some ways I think, forgive me, but I feel like it is deliberately confusing. There are times when and it's deliberate. It's slippery, I would say, slippery language. And so it is important, you know, in working with that document, it was important to slide in and name things to create also specificity. There was a kind of specificity that was necessary to that project, because that document covered such wide swaths of history. It covered everything from original land taking, like settlement, original settlement, to massacres, Wounded Knee, Sand Creek, to boarding schools, to breaking treaties. I mean, my God, they covered everything, right? From A to Z, it felt like. And within that, I sat there and I was like, within that though, it is too easy because it's so much at once. It is too easy to overlook and sort of shove that back under the rug. I think in the American mind, to shove that back under the rug as something of the past, right? So I needed to bring it to the present. I needed to maybe stay grounded in the idea of being Lakota. I needed to have it even specified to my family, you know, my daughter, and so on. So yeah, I'm sorry to whoever wrote the question about naming if I didn't understand it very well, but I hope this might help a little.
There's another question about the star diamond quilt, and it's about sort of the way that we read it. And there's like this impenetrable barrier of the grief that you can't pass. You have to go through that no matter
Yeah.
what path you take, which is just so amazing. Do you how much do you care how we read that poem? You know, when you present a poem like that, or like some of the poems in your book, are you very content to let us make our way through those? You rarely offer, as far as I remember, you rarely offer sort of like a path for us. You know, I feel very trusted to read those poems. I do think that that one is amazing though, because there's that layer of grief that no reader can pass to get to the end of the poem.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think that I'm probably going to publish those. Well, I know that I will publish. I have a whole set of 16. I have 16 pieces between the multicolored quilt and the black one. So I will be publishing those in my next manuscript, and I intend to preface that section with a little, maybe a little, I imagine making a little drawing and telling the reader that you would start at the top and weave your way down. What combination people make doesn't matter to me at all. And that's the joy in it. That's the fun in it. So, and that was also kind of a lot of the work that went into it. I wanted to make sure that most of them made sense, whatever direction you went. But yeah.
That's so great. Here's a question that not every poet likes to answer, but sometimes it's fun to get the answer to this. Can you talk about your writing practice? You know, what do you do? Write every day? Do you write in a notebook? Do you write by hand?
I'm just discovering this about myself. I'm so excited to learn this after all these years. I just realized that I work best with projects, right? So projects, I'll create like a chunk of writing at once, you know? So like I have the star quilt poems, I have some other poems from other exhibits. I have the missing, murdered, and Indigenous women pieces that I'm working on, that I was commissioned for. So that's a kind of like a body of work. And then secondly, I work best with structure. So like I just wrote, look at this, it's so easy, but I wrote down all of my little project series. And when I wrote them all down over the last few years, I was like, oh my God, that's a whole manuscript, you know, if I were to put them together. So then it helped me create an outline, and I kind of have to just fill those sections in and revise. So that's how I work best. I'm trying to change my daily practice. I tend to work at night. I started working at night when I had a baby, and that baby is 14 years old now. I don't need to work at night. And I could work during the day, but I don't know, something kicks in. I work best from 10 at night to like 4 or 5 in the morning. And it goes like that, goes really fast. But I don't do that every night. You know, it's sort of like I get prepared and I say, okay, I prepare my family and I say, I'm gonna work tonight, so then they know.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you think that this, this discovery of the power of projects for you, did this really happen with Whereas, like when you found that document and sort of started interrogating it for the first book?
Yeah.
Did you just probably wrote in your MFA program, just wrote poems like everybody else before?
Yeah.
Not like everybody else.
Yeah. No, it's good. That's a great example. Whereas is a great example. The whole second half of the book was like one project, right?
Yeah.
It came to me and I said, I want to respond to this document because I was so mad about it. It just like really got under my skin, you know? So I sat down, I wrote one poem, and I quickly realized that one poem was not going to be enough. So I said, I'm for sure I'm going to have to write more. So then the question was, how many more? What am I going to do? So I decided to match or surpass the effort of that congressional document. So I went online, I looked at the sections, and I actually just decided to mirror the structure of that apology.
Wow.
So there's 20 whereas statements in that apology. So I wrote 20 of my own. There are 7 resolutions. So I wrote 7 of mine. And there's 2 disclaimers at the end of the whole apology. Yeah. So I wrote 2 disclaimers of my own. And so that structure was great because it's just what I said earlier, you know, when I have that kind of thing, it works very well for me. Maybe because I'm a Virgo. I don't know if that's what's going on. Um,
Well,
yeah.
that's the best of both worlds. It's a project and a built-in structure too.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one other thing about, I mean, this might just be a silly question, but you know, one of the things that so many of my students have loved about the book, and other poets that I talk to also, is that you do such a good job of balancing the political and the personal. And I think in that whereas poem that you just described, you know, you go to interrogate it, and then out of that comes scenes around the dining room table with your father. There's just so many personal things that are sort of coming in and out of that. And I guess I know that's something that every writer, every poet wishes they could do better, is to blend that better. How do you think about that when you begin, or is it just a product of what you know, does it just come out when you sit down from 10 to 4 in the morning, or do you work on wanting to balance those two things out?
Okay, well, if we talk about the whereas pieces, the especially that set of 20 whereas statements, that was a little easier because I knew from the get-go, I knew that I had created a sort of set of constraints, you would say. So one of those constraints was I would only write from the personal I.
Mhm.
It was very important to me that there be the reader understood a kind of uh, personhood, a humanity, you know. So I chose to offer myself as an I, and also not to. I did not want to represent our whole community, so it was also out of respect that I chose to stay within the I, this little column, you know.
Right.
So that kind of made it easy. I knew it had to. I did another constraint was to keep it in within living memory.
Hmm.
All of the pieces needed to be within my lifetime, or at least my parents. You know, so I did not want to jump back historically because I think that that's the problem in the American mind. They have a lot of people have a way of separating the past from the present. And I wanted to demonstrate that the past is the present, right?
Right.
By staying in the present.
Right.
So some of those things really helped me from the very beginning, kind of stay in that lane of the personal. I will say that there are other times when I write, maybe there are other concerns that I'm interested in writing about, and I have to do two, three, four, five different tries at it, like different approaches. Even like the missing and murdered Indigenous women
Mhm.
project, I have done, I don't know how many, five, six completely different approaches. This is the
Wow.
approach I settled on for this month. I like it, but it takes me time, and I just have to try and keep working on it. Sit with the pieces, and then I say, no, you know, this really doesn't feel right. This is not working. This is not. Maybe it's too removed, or maybe it's too much I in the poem. You know.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that makes a lot of people feel a lot better to hear that it doesn't just come out of you that way, but that it's you come at it from different angles. It makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense. There was a question a long time ago on the chat, but I think it's maybe I'm thinking of it now again. It was about that amazing poem about the 38 in
Yeah.
whereas, and that is spoken. You know, can you talk to us a little bit about how you made that one, because it has such a unique flat tone. It's attempting to be so flat and so truth telling,
Mhm.
and you as a speaker are barely present. Can you talk to us about how you thought about doing that, how you came to that form?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's funny that you would say sort of like very flat tone, very direct. because that was kind of like the beginning, maybe a kind of quality that was very important to me before I even wrote a single word for that poem. And the reason is I knew that I wanted to write about the Dakota 38. And I also knew absolutely I wanted, or I needed to write about the assassination of the traitor Andrew Myrick.
Yeah.
That story, as part of the Sioux uprising. So and how they killed him, and they found the traitor with his mouth stuffed with grass.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I wanted, and it was important to me to have that telling in a very flat or direct or very simple, straightforward telling, is because that is the way I heard that story. I've heard that story a number of times when I was younger. It always had a real impact on me every time. But I always remember it being told very like in plain language.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever I might hear it from, they weren't poets. They weren't making it fancy and embellished, and it wasn't like some persona poem or something. It was just very simple, and in the very plain telling of it, it was very impactful. So I started there. I said, I don't want to, and I don't need to make this a big writerly event. I want people to feel it the way that I felt it. So it was just like they found his mouth stuffed with grass. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So then it took time for me to think about the best form for me to write with that kind of tone. And I sat with it for a long time, and then it was like so obvious. It's like the sentence, yeah. Like how much plainer can you get? So yeah.
Well, it comes across as such an amazing, it's so amazingly direct, in a book that also has poems that look like squares and so much other stuff going on. That poem is just so powerfully direct like that, which is the power of directness, I guess. And that simple poem of finding the grass in his mouth. So I think that we are about to wrap up here. It's been an amazing reading. Thank you, Layli, for giving us so much of your time and sharing so many things with with us. We're so happy to have you, and we'd love to have you back to New York City when everyone can travel again someday soon. Let's hope.
I would love that. It really is an honor to be at NYU. Like it was very nice to be invited. So I'm glad to be here with you. And I also wish all of you continued health and strength. We have some light coming over the ridge, right, with vaccines and so forth.
Let's hope.
But all of my best wishes are with you and the community there.
We had so many people, we had so many participants, and you were getting shout outs from all over the country and from Canada. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us and for your questions. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to all of them. Layli, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye.